So, Abby, with you on my podcast, it'd be rude not to talk about comedy and the whole scene behind that. How is the scene of comedy? How woke is it? What problems do you face? And is it as bad as we all think?
Well, Nick, good grief. What can I say? Comedy has been sliding slowly downhill for the past, I'd say, 15 or so years, gradually being eroded. So that people, it's just become a sort of morass of wokeness, of groupthink, of you can't say that. Oh, did you just say that? Self-editing. People sort of, I can see comedians who maybe might have been a bit braver 5 years ago going, should I? No, maybe not, because they've got other comedians in the green room sort of with their beady eyes, their awful Maoist beady eyes on them. So I hate what's happened to comedy. I am somebody who proudly has not capitulated in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I've gone the other way, because people need to laugh. It's a way of just releasing tension, laughing at society, laughing at yourself, laughing at, and there's always going to be, I'm the butt of many of my jokes, but I also say that, we've got to joke about everything, because you can't have little sections which are sort of like, well, yeah, but just don't joke about that, because then, as we see, where does it end? It ends with people like Jerry Sadowitz, great comic, who was banned, had his show pulled from Edinburgh. And you know what? None of the comedians, I think there was maybe one or two comedians, myself included, petitioned, said we want him back. But the Pleasants didn't listen.
That's because most comedians were scared, and they're
Yeah,
saying, "I don't want," because most people are cowards. History teaches us that, and nobody wanted to put their head above the parapet to help him, because it's like, oh, they may then shoot my head off. And the strangest thing about cancelling his show was, from what I've seen on TV, was nobody in the audience complained. It was the staff who worked in the theatre. They
yeah,
they were the complainants.
yeah. The little whingy woke tards that were like, excuse me, but there's somebody, or excuse me, but we don't agree with Mr. Sadowitz as being rude. It's like, do you know anything about Jerry bloody Sadowitz? For Christ's sake, why did they have him? Why did they book him? They know he's deliberately provocative, and like he does, really pushes the envelope. But that for me was one of the we're in serious trouble. But like you said, Nick, they're all bloody. But it's so short term. It's such short term thinking. Do these people not realise that they're contributing to the end of comedy by not saying something?
They don't think that far ahead, and if they do, their cowardice takes over and makes them want to be on the side that seems to be winning. I mean, comedy is very powerful. The reason why people go after comedians is because comedians have a really good knack of attacking the powerful and taking the mickey out of the powerful. And powerful people or powerful groups don't like that, because it's an attack. It's an attack you can get away with. So let's shut the comedians up first. And a great example of that would be, a quick question: who do we all think is the most evil man in the world in the last 70, 80 years?
The most evil man in the world. Oh, I don't know.
Universally accepted. Had a little moustache.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, Hitler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do we all do about Hitler? Yeah. Most people tell jokes about Hitler. Hitler's the butt of many, many jokes, and he was the most vile, evil man in the last 100 years. And we even now we take him down a notch by making jokes about him. That's how powerful comedy is. And as a personal story for me, I used to stutter as a kid. So up to about 13, I used to have a bad stutter. And it was, let me just get this off my screen. There we go. And so in school, it would be if I had a reading class. And I was the butt of many, many jokes. Kids in my class made a joke up about me. And it was Nick, in Nick's house in the morning. Nick's mum shouts upstairs, "Nick, what do you want for breakfast?" And Nick shouts down, "I'll have some I'll have some and Nick's mum shouts upstairs, "Nick, what do you want for lunch?" I laughed at that, and
I like that. That's good.
I had to laugh at stuttering because if I didn't laugh, it gave the people bullying me or taking the mick out of me more power. And I became the first person who would laugh at my stuttering. I would tell jokes about my stuttering, and you could see people then going, I've got nothing to say now to take the mickey out of Nick. I took the power away from them. And again, and that's what people don't like about comedians, especially when you take the mickey out yourself. It's like, well, if you're doing it, how can I attack you? Because you don't seem to care. Comedians are like the canary in a coal mine of society. Once you start going after the comedians, everybody else is fair game.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the court of the king, the jester is the only one who's able to tell the truth. So when the king says to the jester, yeah, mate, sorry, yeah, can you shut up now? You're in trouble. Because then you realize that, oh my God, then anyone could be targeted, you know, for their for what they say. But I mean, I remember being on GB News, must have been must have been last year, and there was some we were some debate about comedy, and this comedian that was on, you know, so in the debate, this woke comedian said that I should only do comedy that was based on, I can only do comedy based on my own lived experience, you know? So I said, well, in which case I can't joke about Matt Hancock because I haven't been Minister for Health. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, you know, everything you should, in my view, you should be able to punch up, sideways, downwards. There should be nothing off limits for comedy.
And if I don't like your style of comedy,
yeah,
I'm free not to buy a ticket and attend.
Yes. Freedom of choice. Remember that, everybody? Absolutely madness. You just reminded me, actually. You know, I had a therapist. This was years ago. I had a therapist once who had a very bad stammer. That was quite. I have to say they were quite long sessions. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at it, but they were quite, especially when there were issues.
Having a stutter.
Yes.
It's funny to everybody else. I understand it's funny. Of course, it's funny.
Yeah. I mean, she was a lovely woman, actually. Lovely woman.
And growing up through my primary school, one of the main TV shows in the country was Open All Hours. And do you remember Granville? So even one of our famous comedian actors put on a stutter. And did I ever find that offensive? I used to laugh at it because it's funny.
Yes, you have to laugh at life, the absurdity of it, because otherwise there's no meaning in life. You know, like I'm a big Roger Scruton fan, and I always, when my husband passed away, I listened to him a lot, and one of his things was find meaning. Anything, it can be anything at all. And if we don't have that in life, it's a very, very dark place. If you just go, well, then there's nothing, what's the point? You know, whatever it may be. So yeah, I totally agree that it's just making the time we have on this planet mean something.
Yeah, and you have an affliction like that, and you can laugh at yourself. It toughens you up inside. A lot of these people who are woke and offended is because they've never had nothing to ever overcome. Life has been so easy for them for so long. When they hear a joke that offends them, it's like, Jesus Christ, like that's that. It's like, well, if you've ever been beaten up by a gang of 8 lads, or you've had a gun pointed in your face, or you've been, you know, all these terrible things that can happen to you. Well, when you hear some naughty words, it's like, they're naughty words. I don't have to go to A&E.
Yeah,
it toughens you up.
Yes, of course it does. And just words, you know, sticks and stones may break my bones, you know, that old thing. Words will never hurt me. And it's so true. They just have no. And I kind of blame the parents, a lot of parents, because there's been a lot of that, hasn't there, where they've just gone. I tell you what, the thing that used to really annoy me was when, you know, when it started coming out, when a parent would say about their child, oh yeah, we're best friends. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're their parent. You're there to look out for them, teach them resilience, wisdom, pass down wisdom, hopefully, you know, and then set them off into the world. And they'll obviously be there as a sounding board. But this thing about, oh, we're best friends. Well, how does that work?
That 20 years I've spent working on the streets, mainly with kids, trying to stop them getting involved in crime and antisocial behaviour. kids don't need any more friends. Kids need a parent. They need someone who's going to guide them because they've got enough friends. And parents who do that are failing parents because that's not your job, is to be their friend. Your job there is to make sure their future is successful.
Yes, yes, exactly. And also to teach boundaries. The idea that, I was thinking this the other day, that a person needs boundaries just like a country needs boundaries. That we have borders as our individuals, and we should have borders as countries, and then we wouldn't be in such shit as we are in the moment.
Yeah, boundaries and borders and social norms and tradition allow us to live our lives without constantly having to question what we're doing, why we're doing it, can we do it, is this going to result in violence, is this going to result in an argument? Because if you live your life like that, it's a very stressful life. When we have traditions and norms and rules, you know the rules of the game, so you then can enjoy playing the game knowing I can't do this, I can do that. When it's a free-for-all, you're basically looking at Mogadishu, where anything goes, and it always leads to violence, and it's very stressful. But going back to comedy, I started seeing the destruction of comedy from the early 80s. And that happened with political correctness. Political correctness was the seed of wokeness. So when we started saying things like, oh, Bernard Manning is a racist, he can't be on TV anymore now. Jim Davison, he's a racist, his jokes aren't funny and they're always picking on people. They were the first signs of what was coming down the line. And the BBC stopped running some of those programs. They couldn't get on TV. They got cancelled. And that was the beginning of it all. Now, I'm not saying those comedians were funny. I do think they were funny. But I'm not saying that's not the point. The point is we produce or we air comedians, then the general public decide who they want to watch. And if Bernard Manning gets no ratings, well, he shouldn't be on TV. But he was getting ratings. It was all political correctness. And that's where this began.
Yes, I agree. And actually, interestingly, political correctness is a Soviet term. Yeah, which is fascinating that it was to do with the things you were allowed to say, as in because it was correct, the party approved, and then now it's become something that a sort of similar thing. So there is there's creeping socialist, leftist collectivization of thought, which is absolutely contrary to what liberal means, to what I think liberal means.
A liberal now means something completely different.
Exactly, yeah. So so to me, anyone that is on board with the woke stuff is by definition approves of authoritarianism, and they need to be told that. And I've lost comedian friends, people that I stopped being booked in 2020. I had because when the people went after me, actually a lot of comedians from Manchester, funny enough, went after me with the trans stuff and the BLM stuff. And then I saw on Twitter clubs unfollowing me because it was like, oh, Abi Roberts she's one of them.
Yeah,
it's like
persona non grata.
Yeah, exactly, persona non grata. When actually, as we see, fast forward 2 years, I'm somebody, I'm proud to say, who is at the forefront of pushing back so that we have more freedom. More freedom, not less. We need more of it, more free speech. Let's just everywhere just go, yeah, you can say what you want. Unless you're inciting, unless you're actually saying, go and kill those people, like the American Constitution, where it's very clear, then to me, it's like everything's fair game.